This is StoryRobot. Welcome to r/Prorevenge. Our first story of today is, Grandfather's Brother Exploits Dying Mother, Grandfather Buys Land to Make the Estate Worthless. About 40 years ago my great-grandparents were dying, great-grandfather was gone and great-grandmother was on her way out, abusing morphine to lessen the pain. She was writing a will when she was sober, but she was rarely sober. Her estate was essentially what would be a multi-millionaire's estate adjusted for inflation. Her estate was in Ireland, while my grandfather and his brother were in England. My grandfather went to his local pub to see brother. He did this every Saturday night to keep in touch with his brother. This time something was different, his brother was not there. Instead, his brother spontaneously moved to Ireland and spent time with his mother, who was heavily on morphine. The morphine was clouding her judgment, and beat in mind she was writing a will. My grandfather's brother, we'll call him Lee from now on, went to Ireland to cozy up to his mother in hopes of getting her whole estate. My grandfather didn't know Lee was doing this, and didn't think much of it. Fast forward about a year and great-grandmother kicks the bucket. Funeral day arrives, and everything goes fine, until they get to the will. Great-grandmother was high on morphine when she was making the will, and everything she had in the will went to Lee. Nobody else got anything in the will. Put two and two together and everyone was pissed off at Lee, but the will couldn't be contested because there were people who signed in witness of the will, including her attorney. Lee becomes outcasted but everyone gives up on trying to save their mother's things. Except Grandad. Lee inherited a large plot of land in Ireland, nothing special, except it was in rural Ireland, it couldn't support a septic tank, and is worth a beep ton of money. The house on this plot was right on the edge of the land, but the septic tank was on the neighbor's land. Lee didn't know this, so he didn't buy the land next to the house. This isn't up to building code, so the house can't be sold until the septic tank is on his land. My grandfather knew this, and bought the land surrounding this house. Lee fixed up the house and got a building inspector to inspect the house and check it was up to code so he could sell the house. The inspector caught the septic tank, and told Lee he couldn't sell the house unless the tank is on his land. Lee went to the neighbors to buy the small plot of land that had the septic tank, only to find out they sold it to my grandfather, and my grandfather was unwilling to sell the land to Lee. Lee invested easily over £300,000 before Ireland went to euro in the house, so the house was in great shape and was supposed to be resold. Lee can't sell the house for a profit because my grandfather owns the land the septic tank is on. Lee can't put a septic tank on his land because the land can't support a septic tank. My grandfather put Lee into a checkmate where Lee has to sell the land and everything on it to my granddad. My grandfather isn't going to buy the land for anything more than €5,000, and to this day Lee still won't sell the land to my grandfather. My grandfather didn't want the land, he just wanted to return the favor to Lee. Lee is now just scraping by on his plot of land because of his stubbornness, and he still to this day won't accept defeat. Our second story of today is, revenge on the lowlife landlord who first deprived us of heat and later kept our security deposit. I was a kid back in the 80s, 2 years out of college when I moved into an apartment by the shore in NJ. When the cold weather arrived, there was always a few days when the apartment was cold, we would tell the super, and then the heat would start arriving. One year the heat started decreasing in February, and inside the apartment was like in the 50s and we had to start wearing coats. We told the super about it and nothing happened this time. We wrote the landlord about it, and still nothing. So we checked with an attorney and learned about warranty of habitability and withholding of rents. So yet another certified letter to the landlord and we start withholding rents. He files a motion to evict us and we answer with the Marini defense, depositing the withheld monies with the court. The judge finds in our favor for all the money with withheld. We continue to live there because there just aren't many other options as we save for a home. Flash forward to living there for 6 years, on the last lease because we are about to buy a home, we write in a clause that we can break the lease with 45 days notice in writing, similar to his 45-day clause. They don't notice it because it's slightly obscured on the top left of page 2, so they sign off on it and return it to me. So in the middle of the lease, we give the 45-day written notice, make the rent payments, and leave. They don't return our deposit, so we sue for it, demanding double. They sue us for the remainderment of the 6 months' rent, and refuse to return our security deposit. This is no longer small claims court, but we proceed without an attorney anyway, they are expensive. We arrive at the courthouse and court forces a round of arbitration. The arbitrator says we will lose in front of the judge and to pay the rent remainder mens. We refuse and wait for the judge. While waiting, the landlord's attorney drops by and asks why we didn't take the arbitrator's advice, so we tell him about the clause we wrote in, and he states he saw it too, and that since it was crossed out, it's not part of the deal. We show him our copy of the lease where it's not crossed out, and his face goes white as a sheet. He makes a call to the landlord, who then offers to properly break the lease with no penalty and return our security deposit in full. We refuse, and we show him the certified letter stating that we would have accepted that deal up until yesterday, but that if you force us to come down to court, we want double damages of the improper withholding of the security deposit. He tries again to reach out to the landlord, but no luck this time. We go to see the judge. He looks at both leases and calls their attorney to the bench. The judge takes our lease, and thrusts it toward their attorney and says, "This is the lease in force." Their attorney starts walking around the courtroom like a chick with his head cut off, while I try to laugh as quietly as possible. The judge fines for us for double damages. We receive nothing for a week, and I go back to the courthouse where the clerk says, they should pay that judgment immediately, and tells us about chattel execution, and gives us that form. A couple of weeks pass, and a check appears from the landlord. Another month passes and we get a call from the court. They have our money. I told them the landlord had sent a check a while back, so all it good. She tells us that we should have informed the court that we got the money to stop the chattel execution from occurring. The court sent the sheriff to their offices and confiscated office equipment and sold it at auction to satisfy the judgment. They said don't worry, they will just return the money to the landlord. That is the revenge, getting the money and having them experience the abrupt seizing of their assets at their place of business, having it sold at auction, and then having the money returned to them. Major pro-justice. Our final story of today is, cheating while we're engaged. I'll exploit your phobias. A while back, I was engaged to a guy who seemed like a good choice. Attractive, funny, good job, owned a home. I learned he had a bit of a downside, though. He was a cheating slimeball mother beeper. Not just a one-time one-night stand with after too much to drink, which I would have still been angry about but could have probably gotten over, but repeatedly with more than one woman. I picked up on a few cues, but eventually had things confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt. I was venting to my brother about this, and told him about how I planned to move out while the beep butt was out on a week-long business trip. He volunteered to help me before I asked, and then got this amazing devious grin on his face. We can also leave a memento for him, he said. When I asked what he meant, he said, Pennywise and his friends. You see, the beep dipper was scared of clowns. Not just a little uncomfortable, but beeping terrified of them. Even as a grown man, a clown on a TV show, webcomic, or book would freak him out and he'd have to change the channel or click away. My brother owns a print shop and is protective of his little sister. So in the couple of weeks leading up to Beep Butt's trip, he printed off a dozen's pictures of clowns in various sizes. Ranging from really small wallet-sized ones to big poster-sized prints. We framed most of the stuff in some super cheap plastic frames. Others we laminated. We managed to move all of my stuff out pretty quickly, which gave us a lot of time to get things set up for my ex. We took down every single framed picture and put up framed clown pictures. The clowns ranged from average clown to nightmare fuel hellspawn. Pictures on the walls, art prints, photographs in frames on tables. You name it, it was replaced with a clown picture. Where we became really devious was taking the laminated ones and placing them in things like the silverware drawer, the underside of the toilet lid, so when he went to take a piss he'd be greeted with this when he lifted the seat, in the fridge and freezer, on the back of cleaning bottles, in his underwear drawer, and a bunch of other places. We even made sure to put some in places that he wouldn't go into for a while so he'd get a scare months later. He had one of those attic accesses that you have to pull down on and a ladder descends. We put a big laminated clown face on there so when the ladder flipped open for him to climb, he'd get a clown face. While we were setting this up, I went a step further and changed the wallpaper on his desktop computer to a clown. I also took about 10 of his favorite movies that he had on DVD and replaced them with home-burned DVDs that had clown footage. They auto-played, and we'd printed up labels that looked like the original DVD artwork. We put all of his original artwork and DVDs in the basement, off the ground and protected from damage. But surrounded by giant clown posters of Pennywise and the like. And a motion sensor that, when triggered, would play a creepy clown laugh. I left a note on the kitchen table that said, I know about Beep. Beep you. I'm out. After a few days of hard work of moving me out and moving a few clown cars worth of terror in, my brother, his wife and I celebrated by grilling some steaks and having a few beers. These were paid for by the engagement ring I sold. Once the dumbass returned, I got a text message or two that was along the lines of, you Beep. It must have taken him days to take care of the photos out in the open alone. There was never any further action or legal repercussion for what we'd done. After all, what grown man would want to say that his ex-fiancée scared him with clown pictures? Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.